All right, everyone, we'll get started. We already have 47 attendees in the meeting. We're expecting an audience of 178 attendees based on the latest RSVP numbers. So thank you all for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have attendees and panelists from across the world, from California to Kenya. So thank you all for being here with us today on this Congolese Independence Day, June 30th. And this is CDIS's inaugural virtual panel, Congo at 60, Reclaiming the Congolese Narrative. My name is Jim Gokwe, and I'm the co-founder of Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit, or CDIS for short. I co-founded the organization alongside Luko Kasomo, who will be moderating today's panel. Our vision for launching CDIS was to create a platform for Congolese in the diaspora and in the DRC to share resources, to share ideas, and to network, but also to amplify the voices of Congolese experts across different fields. We had our inaugural event last September in New York City. It was during the United Nations General Assembly Week, and we had more than 100 attendees who joined us from across the world, from Europe, from North America, and from Africa. They traveled far distances to join us because they believed in our mission and our vision. You can learn more about last year's event at Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit.com. You can see who were the attendees, who were the panelists, as well as what some of the key takeaways were. Today, for DRC's independence, we wanted to do our inaugural virtual panel to discuss DRC narratives since independence 60 years ago. We will be discussing narratives for the DRC across media, business, policy, and we have a talented panel of Congolese who are playing a role in shaping these narratives in different fields. We'll hear about their perspective on the current narratives and what they plan to do to help shape future narratives for the DRC, as well as their thoughts on how we can collectively as Congolese reclaim our narratives. Thank you all for joining us today. Now I'll pass it on to Luko Gasomo, our co-founder and today's moderator.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Jim, for such a thorough and wonderful introduction. As Jim mentioned, my name is Luko Kasomo, and I am the co-founder of CIS, the Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit. So today, if you have any comments or anything that you want to share, we're going to be on Twitter. We're also going to be on Instagram all day, tweeting and putting out messaging using the hashtag Congo at 60. So we encourage you all to use that hashtag so that we can create a larger conversation about Congo's 60th Independence Day. So hashtag Congo at 60. So if you have anything else throughout the panel that stood out to be remarkable to you, just use that hashtag and we'll be able to retweet you after our panel today. So today I'm going to introduce our 4 very illustrious speakers. Very excited to have all of these folks here. As Jim mentioned, we have folks coming in from the US to all the way to Kenya and to Congo. So I'm going to start off with Salima Etoka. Salima is a graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and an alumna of Trinity College. She's also a Truman Scholar who's committed to public policy, public service, and is passionate about gender equality and social protection. And so she will be talking a little bit more about policy and development today. And then next we have Liz Kitenge.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Liz, welcome. So Liz is the communications director for LOI TV, which is a multimedia platform dedicated to the visual storytelling of diversity that exists within fashion, beauty, and culture. She is also the founder of its BisoNaBiso, which is dedicated to highlighting Congolese culture and entertainment. And then next we have Eric Mboma. Eric Mboma holds an MBA from Chicago Booth School of Business and an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Both the Africa Report and the Choiseul Institute ranked Eric among the top 50 rising stars and listed him for years among the top 20 of its 100 economic leaders of tomorrow. Respectively, Eric was selected to be the Vice President of the Congolese Banking Association in 2012, and he served as the CEO of Standard Bank Group, DRC, from 2012 to 2017. He's currently the Executive Director for the group subsidiaries and affiliates of the African Guarantee Fund. And then last but not least, we have Thony Ngumbu. Thony is the co-founder and CEO of Mwinda Technologies, a US company that offers clean energy and financial technology solutions to address the lack of reliable electricity and financial inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa. So let's just welcome them all today. Today, it's going to be a bit of a free-flowing discussion, so there will be some questions that I will address to everyone, and then there'll be some questions that we will be addressing specifically to each panelist. So in honor of today's momentous occasion, I just want to start off and open the floor to all of the panelists. And today we are celebrating 60 years of independence. We're all from Congo. We have our different paths and stories as we all know it, but I want to hear from you all. Tell us about 2 or 3 achievements that you are proud of as a Congolese today. So I'll open the floor. Let's say ladies first. I'm seeing Liz on my screen pop up first. So why don't you start us off? What are you proud of as a Congolese?
As a Congolese, I think I'm very proud of our resilience of people, despite everything that we've been through, and just the history of our country. We're still here, we're still thriving, we're still, finding ways to just keep going. And then I think also, obviously, our culture overall. I mean, there's nothing like being Congolese, from food to music to just our essence overall as people. And I think as well as also the diaspora. Third is, obviously there's Congolese people back home, and there's also the diaspora. I think I'm very proud of how I feel like there's a sudden shift, and people are really, just claiming the narrative, really, and coming together to define, what it means to be Congolese, showcasing what it really is, and, changing the narrative of what, it was before.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I see you, Salima. Go ahead and take it off.
Apologies for that, but I just wanted to add to what Liz said, completely agree with her 100%. And I think for me, something that I've also started to notice is just some of the development in terms of technology in the science community. For example, I'm connected with Professor Jonathan Mboyo Esole. And when I see the work that he's doing, and then I see other folks that he's connected to and the work that they're doing either in the US or back in Congo, right? I start to just understand it to be I've always been proud, but I just have such pride to see that Congolese people are doing their thing, whether it's science, whether it's technology, et cetera, and they're doing it back home, and they're doing it in the diaspora. And if they're in the diaspora, they are searching for opportunities to connect to people back home, so that the resources we have here, the knowledge and expertise, doesn't just stay here. It goes back home to the people that are there. And so for me, honestly, as I see these people doing their thing in tech, science, I am very proud. It's not my field, but it's something that I'm learning from them, and I'm excited to see what they do next.
Thony, Eric, do y'all want to hop in?
Sure. Thank you for that. A lot to be proud of. Just first, let me just say thank you for this opportunity. It's a great opportunity to be on this panel. And when I was introduced as an illustrious panelist, I almost fell off my chair. I said, okay, I don't know if I'm up to par, but I'll do my best not to make CDIS look bad, and hopefully I get invited again. So in terms of achievements, a lot to be proud of. The first one I would say, really, I congratulate this country for being the birthplace of Patrice Emery Lumumba. Now, granted, parents were obviously involved here in his conception, but after all, he is from this country, and we all know Lumumba played a very key role in the struggle for independence, right? So if we're even here today, it's because people like Patrice Lumumba and others played such a great role in fighting for independence. The second thing I'm really proud of is the culture. Okay, I think too often culture gets underestimated, right? It's people might say music, movies, and things of that nature, but no, culture is an important part of a people. And Congolese culture, from the onset of the 60s and on, has been able to take a significant role on the African continent. So to me, that's something to actually be proud of and to build on. And then I would say science. Congo does not always get associated with science, but we have somebody like Dr. Muyembe, okay, who developed a significant vaccine against Ebola. And he played a key role in stopping the disease when it was spreading in West Africa. And lastly, I would say being in the energy sector, very few moments made me happier than liberalizing the sector in 2014. That was one of those moments where you go, yes, finally, we can have the private sector come in the energy sector. So those are the four things I can think of that I can really be proud of.
Thank you. And Eric, why don't you close us out on that question? Sorry, Eric, we know you have some great points, but we can't hear you.
Is this better? Okay, so I felt like it was that Liz, Salima, Thony have covered almost everything. I would say that what I'm most proud of is our legacy. We have the founding fathers of our independence. And we have talked about Lumumba, but there are so many others. But Lumumba was probably one of the most prominent. But many have basically sort of, made this path possible. And today we still have to basically carry on our own responsibility in all of that. And maybe that's what we're going to be covering today. But I'm proud of what they did before, and I'm proud of the risk they took. Leadership is also taking a risk, and they did that, exactly that. It's taking, I think there is an Irish root to the word that means death, actually. But they took the risk and they made it happen. I think that's something that I'm really proud of. I'm also proud of all those multiple heroes we have back home. Yes, you mentioned a few of them. But I also know, I'm just thinking of a lady I was glad to see the work of. That's Louise Takizala in Lubumbashi. And she found that she went from starting a kindergarten, basically the American story of basically doing it in your garage, and then rose to founding a university. And she has thousands and thousands of kids who graduate every year. That's impressive. And that's something I'm proud of. I'm also proud of the talents I've met. When I was honored to be running a couple of organizations in the DRC, I recruited African talents, including and a lot of Congolese talents. And it was amazing to see talents coming from back home, trained in DRC, and also people coming from abroad. And it was always quite amazing to see that if you give them a chance, they can actually make a huge difference. And maybe the last, I would say the last thing that comes to my mind is gonna be just your organization. I saw you basically coming off the ground. And I think it's the kind of things I want to see. I want us to be part of the society we live in, no matter where we live in. That's how we can we can make Congo stronger, because we're active citizens of wherever we are.
Thank you all for your responses. As a Congolese, I am definitely just very proud of all of the folks who every single day try their best in their own ways to try and make Congo better. So all of us here, all of you who have supported CDIS, you all are part of that and a part of our story. And hopefully we'll be able to continue to make inroads to make Congo a better future for the next generation. So that, I think, is a great question leading into what I have next. And this is primarily directed to Thony and Eric. So what are some of DRC's greatest assets that often get overlooked, which could be beneficial to progressing the development of the country?
Eric, okay, so I guess I'll start if that's okay. So what are some of the greatest assets you're saying? To me, I mean, first, the Congo is a great country, even though it might be a little biased. It's a great country in the center of Africa, great population, great diversity. But some of the assets, to me, that we often overlook is one, you have the population youth. Okay, to me, that's very important. Like if you look at it, we have a very young population. I don't know if you know what the median age is in the Congo. It's actually 17 years old. So that is very young. Now, granted, if you look at life expectancy based on that, it's like 34, and so it's not great. But as we develop, we can expect that living conditions will improve. So this population has a long time to go, right? And so this is essentially a great labor force to develop the country. We have key contributors that will be part of change for a very long time. That is a key assets that the Congo has. Another one, I would say, the land mass. Sometimes we talk about size, but we don't really just grasp that, right? It's you say, okay, 875,000 square miles. Yeah, it's big, but it's hard to grasp, right? But another way to look at it, I'm like, okay, so we have all this space, and then you hear that we have 80 million hectares of arable land. Okay, a lot of land, a lot of space available to develop key sectors like agriculture. And then you look at population density. So we have all these spaces, and actually the Congo is not very populated. We have a population density of about 40 per square kilometers. If you want to put it in comparison, you have countries like China, for example, that has something about 146 per square kilometer versus 40 in the Congo. You have countries like Rwanda, it's like 440 per square kilometers. Countries like Nigeria, it's 197. So we have all this space. We have this young population. We have a lot of arable land. And so we have a lot of key ingredients that I think we don't mention enough as an asset to the country.
No, Thony is making a point. The natural resources don't limit themselves to the mining space, although it is what it is, and it means everything all of you have certainly read about. The Congolese people have creativity. You see it being expressed in arts, that's true. But I believe that to a certain extent, we could do much more with what we have if we could add, all of us, our talents to what is already being done by others quite, I would say, quite well. I would like to see DRC Nollywood equivalent with everything we have, all the talents you see being expressed on the ground. But beyond that, I think that when I think of DRC, we need not to forget the challenges of the environment. I'm not looking for excuses. But I think that we need not to forget the challenges of the environment in order to be able to leverage and to actually have the right kind of fight to do things better in the DRC. I'm stepping back a little bit, but the feeling I generally have is like DRC is like a suit with quite large shoulders. And filling in that shoulders require being tall yourself, being aspiring to, being ambitious. So I guess it doesn't matter the area. There is so much to be done, and you're talking about the land mass itself. It's impressive, and I think we have. I was in the mining space because I think it's still very relevant. I was in the mining space, and the potential of DRC, we're just barely scratching the surface of it. We should have all the value chain of those industries existing in the DRC, and we should actually fight very hard for that.
Thank you so much for that, gentleman. And so, Salima, you recently wrote a report for the Africa Report, and kind of keeping on the same theme in terms of what Congo needs for development. Could you talk to us a little bit more about what are some policies that Congo could benefit from in order to help move our development forward?
Yeah, definitely. So my colleague Jennifer Gore and I wrote a piece recently after taking a class on modern slavery and human trafficking. And as we are sitting in this class, we are going through details of the exploitation that happens of the Congolese people, including children in the mines. And as someone who is Congolese and Jennifer is Malian French, we couldn't just sit there and continue to hear about the abuse and the exploitation without doing something about it. And so we did write a piece in which it was a call to action for other Harvard, Kennedy School graduates, and just other people in this world, saying that we can have development, right? We can have these technological advancement, but it doesn't have to be at the hands of the Congolese people dying. It doesn't have to be at these children who are kept out of school and who are working for less than $1 a day for us to get access to our technology. And so, we'll share the link to the article, but take a look yourself, because like we said, we can have the developments and the Congolese people can also get what they need without having to suffer. And so to get into this question about policies, for me, I think I focus a lot more on social policy. And so I will take a look at what it means and connect it back to this article. And so one of the key policy issues that we also looked at was education, right? We know now that, right, education is free as of like last year, so people can go to school. But we still find that there are kids who are not in school, right? There are kids who are in these mines. And so I think that as a policymaker, trying to understand why are these kids not in school? Why do we need to get them into school? Because when you have an educated population, like there are so many more possibilities of what you can do. And so one of the things that we want to look at is, right, education, getting people into schools. But at the same time, we also want to look at the quality of education, like what is happening in the classrooms, so that you are training people. But at the same time too, you also have to start thinking, when people graduate, what are the opportunities for them, right? Can they get jobs in the sectors that they've studied? Are we encouraging and supporting entrepreneurship in the way that you'll see like they do in the US and other countries? And then at the same time, right, it's like, what infrastructure are we building so that people can improve their lives? Because, right, I'll talk about education, I'll talk about the mine, but for me, I think at the back of my mind, we also have to start looking at, right, social protection and what it means for Congo to put together policies that will protect different sectors of societies. To me, for example, people can't retire in Congo because, right, it's not a thing and you're working daily life. So in other countries, right, they will have some sort of retirement scheme or something for older folks to get some rest. I also think of like people living with disabilities, right? What sort of protection do we have for them? Right now, it's very minimal. And like I said too, right, we talked about education, but I think for me, what I think about it is, right, Congo has these resources. And so as policy makers think about what the next 60 years look like, it's thinking about how do you enact policies that improve people's quality of life by providing them access to jobs, to education, to a better standard of living, so that we're not having this conversation again. And as my colleagues said here, we have the resources to make this possible. So how do we work on that? And at the same time, continue to improve the quality of life for Congolese people, so somebody else is not writing this article like I did because I was broken by what I was hearing about in my classes.
Thank you. And so something that you all have kind of touched upon is we're looking to try and make Congo better, especially for the next generation. I believe it was Thony who had mentioned, I think the median age of a Congolese person at the moment is 18, around there. And so one question that I want to specifically ask Liz and Salima, given that Congo has such a young representation, and we know that the government doesn't necessarily reflect the demographic, how are ways in which the millennial and the Gen Z population can get involved and become proactive in trying to move the country forward?
For me, I would say that I think working with each other, really, because it's also the government is, it's definitely their responsibility to provide and, make it easier for people to be able to just have a better environment for, to move the country forward. But I think it would definitely help if young people amongst themselves kind of gathered, collaborated, and, created communities with different things that they're passionate about how they're able to, contribute and moving the country forward. And as well as, we also here in the diaspora can also take more action and be more, keeping up with what's going on back home. You don't necessarily also have to be in the Congo to make a change. You can do it from here, whether it's, donating or doing your research or just be more proactive. So, I mean, for me, the one thing I would say is definitely collaboration amongst the youth and seeking out ways that they can just work together to bring change.
I think adding on to what Liz said, some of the things that I think about is, right, if you're a policymaker, and that could mean so many things, whether you're working in like civil society organizations, nonprofit, government, etc. I wonder, like, how are you seeking out the voices of millennials or Gen Z? Like, do you have opportunities for them to comment or to let you know what their issues are? And so similar to what Liz was saying, I think if there was some sort of platform where you can hear the voices of millennials, Gen Zers, Congolese back home in the diaspora, and then connect them into doing something else, I think that's an avenue to take. I also think, and this is maybe dreaming and maybe it won't happen now, but I think for myself, getting into like public service, like I did a fellowship in New York City government. And so maybe somewhere down the line, Congo will say, we want the best and the brightest of the Congolese who want to do work in policy to have some sort of fellowship or an opportunity to embed themselves in government or, again, civil society or whatever it is, so that you can use their talent, you can learn from them, and you can improve your system, your approach to how you work with people, because I'm definitely somebody who's benefited from that. And so I can't even imagine the possibilities if we were able to do something similar like that in the Congo.
If I may just jump in quickly, Kogo, if you allow me, very rapidly, about millennials and Gen Z. One thing we often hear about this generation is it's a now type of generation, right? I want change now. I want things to be done now. The one thing I'd just like to say is be mindful that when we talk about systemic change, right, it's a long-term effort. It's something that has to be sustained in the long term. Once you find your cause, you really have to be involved. And if you allow me just real quickly, you all remember in the, I think it was 2014, we had the ice bucket challenge. I went in and read some numbers about that. And apparently that year, the organization for Lou Gehrig disease raised about $114 million, which was way more than they had ever raised. And then the following year, all those donations went right back to what they had raised the previous year. So what had happened is you had this craze where, you guys remember, everybody grabbing the ice buckets, throwing it all over your body. Luckily for me, my wife saved me from doing that. I did not indulge into that whole thing. But it was this craze and people were involved. We want change. But at the end of the day, like true, meaningful long-term change did not occur. So yeah, so it's important to understand that change will take time. Being involved, you don't have to be on the ground, as Liz said, and Eric also said it. You can impact change from almost anywhere you are. Actually, being in the diaspora, you have access to free speech more than maybe some people do on the ground. You have access to resources that other people don't have on the ground. So, be involved, participate, but it's a long-term effort.
Thank you, Thony, for that. And Eric, did you want to add something?
Well, I think listening to everybody else in the team reminded me of a conversation I've had in the past, in which people were sort of, talking about that part of the diaspora living abroad. Is that a good thing for the country? They're leaving the country, they should be back home and helping build, etc. I think that's a false debate. People being abroad have a wonderful opportunity to learn, gain experience and build expertise in things that they might not even have a chance to learn if they were back home. So, I mean, this is absolutely different from policy, obviously. But I'm just talking about the behavior we should have. If we're abroad, we should be sponges and we should be learning as much as possible, be involved in the societies in which we live. I was based in Singapore and I was part of a series of organizations locally that didn't have anything to do with Africa. But I learned a lot and I built relationships that were very useful for me when I went back home and started running a company back home. So that was one of the points I wanted to make. And maybe the second one, if you allow me, I can help but think about the most recent trade agreement, free trade agreement for Africa that has been signed by multiple governments. And I believe DRC also signed it. The first thing I can, and this I'm getting into policy a little bit right now, but this is a huge opportunity, a huge venue for Congolese entrepreneurs to not only leverage off our huge potential market inside the borders of DRC, but also looking beyond the country. Are we prepared for that? When you make such an opportunity possible in your country, you should look into the country as well, make sure, and maybe this has been done, I'm just sharing a view. You should make sure that your own capability is ready to actually absorb the shock and leverage of it to actually make it an actual economic opportunity. And it's not an easy thing to do. Education comes into play, infrastructure is systematically to be considered, and so forth, and so on and so forth. So those were some of the things I wanted to put to bring in here. I think it's important to have this long-term view that we sometimes lack, but also make sure that we leverage off this diaspora, where we have a diaspora, to bring and add to the bucket of everything that is being done back home.
Thank you for that. I want to shift gears a little bit. Obviously, being Congolese, we cannot have this panel and not talk about Congolese culture. And as we're talking about the youth, especially the millennial, the Gen Z population that is booming, one thing that we know that they love to use is the internet. I mean, we all are using the internet. And as COVID has shown us, our lives are becoming even more interconnected in the digital space. So Liz, with that being said, I'm curious, how can we use digital media as a platform in order to help change the narrative about Congo and Congolese folks?
In my opinion, I think it's already happening, especially with people, back home in here. I mean, an example of digital media being used a lot to change the narrative is, through Instagram. Through Instagram, there's a lot of pages like Congo Positive and Congo, I think it's Congo Travel. They showcase like different parts of the country that you've never heard about. Like you get to see like how it really puts into perspective and how big our country is, and how it's just, there's so many beautiful places that that never really would have gotten to get showcased if it wasn't for social media or digital media. And I would say that, even with platforms like this, like Congo Summit, putting together and bringing us all together to talk about and connect and possibly, create a network where we can impact change back home. And I think that we are really taking the helm with, especially within the diaspora, of what, just showcasing what, the reality of what Congo is. I mean, for so long it was, I think we were dubbed like the capital rape of the world, I believe. And so much is also about like the cult and the child, obviously all of that is going on, but at the same time, it's not everything that our country is or our culture is. So I think digital media has really, really is helping shifting the narrative and showcasing a different side of our culture, of what we're capable of. I mean, we get to see what's really going on the ground, and with people protesting or making change, or hearing about, you know, Dr. Muyembe, and, you know, and so it's, I think it's definitely, digital media is definitely a tool that a lot of people are utilizing on the ground and here as well to change the narrative and take control of what we want, you know, how we want Congo to be showcased in the world.
That's fair. I mean, does anyone else have anything you want to contribute in terms of ways that Congolese folks can use the various digital platforms that we have in order to change our narrative and to connect with folks outside of Congo? Please feel free to contribute.
Okay, so I'm going to speak. Hi, everyone. My name's Jeremy. I'm tuning in from London. Firstly, just wanted to say what you guys are doing is really, really awesome. Funny enough, me and my other friends who were all Congolese, I'm from London, we were actually talking about saying that we want to see some sort of Congolese diaspora union, because we were like, do you know what? Like, I feel like we're not the only ones who are being born outside of Congo, obviously being Congolese, but being born in River. A lot of us are in Europe. I know a lot of us are in America as well. And some, obviously, a lot of us are still back home. But yeah, we were just sort of thinking, what can we do to interlink everyone? Because we know there's a lot of Congolese in France. We know there's a lot of Congolese in Belgium. There's a lot of us here. There's a lot of us in America. So ultimately, we were sort of just thinking, oh, how can we sort of connect everyone? Because I just felt like we were just feeling like, you know, there needs to be an agenda amongst us diasporas, but also where. So ultimately, like what you guys are already doing. Hence why when my cousin sent me this page and told me this was happening, I jumped in straight away. I was like, yeah, I'm getting involved, because ultimately this is what I ultimately wanted. So just to sort of hear everyone and to hear all the cool things you lot are doing, and in your own respective fields, but also just to hear the knowledge you lot have is just really, it's really, really good, because of course then that allows me to soak up some new information that I could then share with my people back here, and, you know, just try and get some sort of networking going on. So like Liz pretty much said, I feel like, you know, we already are changing the narrative. You've got so many different pages that portray Congo in a positive light. I know I follow some of these pages, and I'm absolutely amazed when I sort of see what Congo's really like and not what has been portrayed by the mainstream media. Because I feel like that's what a lot of us have seen Congo to be like, just coming from the mainstream media. So I think with everything that's happening right now, you know, things like CDIS and all these other pages on social media that are trying to portray Congo in a different light is already changing the narrative, because what that's doing to all of us that maybe haven't seen Congo or haven't been Congo, for example, I haven't been Congo since I was 5, so technically, and I'm 25, so that's 20 years. I kind of say, look, I don't really know what Congo's like because I can't remember, do you know what I mean? And a lot of my other friends in the same boat. So it's just good to be growing up and seeing Congo in a different change of light, because then that's just giving us motivation to want to go back and
all right,
you know, make a difference. So
sorry, I have to jump in. We have a
Yeah.
limited time, and I just want to make sure that we get some more input from our panelists. But just to let you all know, in about 10 minutes, we'll be opening up the floor to questions. Obviously, we have a lot of people that are on the line, so if you could please just put your questions in the chat box, that would be the easiest way in which we can direct answers to those questions. But thank you so much for contributing that piece. And just to kind of, I guess, a good segue from there, Thony and Eric, we know that both of you all have spent time both of y'all moved back to Congo to go and work. And so we just wanted to kind of get some input in terms of what that experience was like. If you could just briefly talk about what impacted you all to make the decision to go back. And then also just kind of talking about some of the challenges and successes that you had while you were there. So just to give you a little bit of a time frame, I know things are moving quick, but if you all can maybe do about a minute or 2 minutes each, so then we can give Liz and Salima an opportunity to answer 1 or 2 questions before we close it out. So we're talking about your experiences, just briefly, what impacted you to go back to Congo, and talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you experienced and some of your successes.
Eric? Oh, okay, I'll take it up. Very rapidly, let's start with what impacted me to return to the DRC and leave the US. Honestly, as simple as this may sound, it was really about following my heart. I mean, because the thing with me is, no matter how meticulously you prepare, right? I'm convinced that you will never be ready until you really take the plunge and you decide to come play in this sandbox, if I may call it as such. So knowing that it's something I always wanted to do, unfortunately I left the Congo when I was just about 5 years old. Grew up abroad, spent years in Belgium and then 20 years in the U.S. But all throughout, I always had that desire that I needed to go back. It was in my heart, and I'm not special in that. I know most of the folks in the diaspora that I speak with, it's a sentiment that is really expressed quite often. So I had that, and what I had to do was kind of get reconnected to the realities on the ground. Because yeah, it's one thing to follow your heart, but you also still don't want to go in blindly, right? You want to make as an informed decision as possible for you to pull the trigger. So what that meant for me was, one, living the corporate world and going into the NGO world, because that allowed me to get a firsthand experience, a professional experience on the African continent, across the continent. So from that experience, I was really able to assess the real pain points on the ground, the real needs on the ground, and really get myself ready to finally pull the trigger and make the plunge. And obviously, to help when you have a very supportive family and a very supportive wife and so on, that's always very helpful. In terms of successes, I would say, to me, connecting with talent on the ground. We have a team of about 10 people, 15 overall, but 10 really at the office. And coming in, I had to know that, I had to tell myself, you know what, it doesn't matter that you have expertise in the diaspora, but you're coming in, you still will need to learn the realities on the ground. And so I had to connect with talent on the ground. To me, that's a great success, and it joins kind of like what Eric was saying before. We have amazing talent in the DRC. Sometimes it's just a matter of giving somebody an opportunity to express it. So that to me is one of the success, having a fantastic team across the board, and obviously materializing the concept. It's one thing to have an idea, especially a field like energy. It's a totally different ballgame to actually materialize that into something tangible on the ground. We have been able to do that. It's still quite a new experience in the Congos, because we only started here in 2019, but that's something I'm very, very proud of. Still have a long way to go, but it's something I'm very happy about.
I guess I'll jump in now. I would say that when I wrote my essays for admission to the grad schools, I was literally telling a story, because I needed to be admitted, obviously, to the schools. And in that process, I actually sort of uncovered my passion for Africa, my love for DRC naturally, and my desire to have an impact at some point in my life. So when you go to the Kennedy School and you have not had a chance to actually go on the ground, even though it might seem difficult, even though I could have had a career, continue my career at that point in time in Singapore or in the US, I decided to go back home because there was this kind of emotional effect. DRC was also an opportunity for some kind of a litmus test of my integrity. It's easy to blame those who are on the ground and not doing right, but are you prepared to do what is right yourself? And when you come on the ground and you're faced with the challenges that everybody is faced with, because people sometimes don't do the right thing because of the challenges they have in front of them, not because of their intentions. They might have the best intentions possible, but when they have a choice between sort of paying their rent or even eating versus accepting a bribe, for instance, the call is sometimes different, more easier in some ways than what it would seem like. I would say the opposite, actually, more difficult than what it would seem when you're talking about it from the outside. So that was an opportunity to see the reality and continue my experience maybe differently. And it's also an opportunity to see for yourself what the possibilities are on the ground. To me, the reward was running a company and doing it right in the DRC. The reward was being able to see the company support some companies and even support some state-owned enterprises while it was against the company policy to do so in the first place. If you're in banking, you know that risk management is essential in driving a business in that space, in the financial services space. And DRC's perception is one of the worst you have. And you have a chance when you're on the ground to change the perception, because you're going to be applying tools that you have thought about, and you're going to be pushing your company to take new challenges that were thought of as being out of scope, if you wish. So for that reason alone, I mean, for those reasons, it was a wonderful experience. But I think that if I was to give an advice to those who are interested in the DRC challenge, is to think about it beforehand, and to have a chance, therefore, by doing your own research, to adjust your expectation with the reality. People expect to have an expat life when they go back home. That's the only reason why they would accept to go back home. But there is more to it when you come on the ground and see the reality. And so that's the reason for me to actually do your homework first, and you're going to see the reward. It was an emotional call to go back home, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. But I know what I'm dealing with. The question is, are you ready?
And what a great way to kind of sum up that call to action. And so I have this question for Liz and Salima. Obviously, we could not have this panel and not address this piece, as see it as one of the big things that we want to try and push forward. We're a woman-owned business, number one. And number two, we're always trying to make sure that we elevate the voice of Congolese women. And so for Liz and Salima, can you all talk a little bit about the contribution of Congolese women and how women can help to move the country forward as well? And what are different things that you all have been seeing in terms of the space of different Congolese women that have been doing that?
I can go ahead and start us off. And one thing I will say, and I think you touched on, is that, right, no society, no community can get anywhere if they leave a section of their community out. And so I've had, like, women I was working with in Senegal say, imagine a chair, and if one leg of the chair wasn't working, what would happen? And so I will say the same thing, right? Congo, if Congolese women are not part of the discussion, if they're not part of the policy making, they're not running things, we can't really have a conversation, and we can't talk about a better future, because you are taking a segment of society and you're not hearing from them. And so knowing that, I think for me, that Congolese women have always been working to make the country better. And I think some of the examples for me right now, I see like Malaika, right, which is run by Noella, who is in the diaspora, but she runs a school that is educating girls in Lubumbashi, in Kalebuka near Lubumbashi, but they're also working with the community. There are also other organizations that I've come across, like Here Congo, which is also run by Congolese women. And so these are just two examples that I've given you, but I'm sure that we can find other examples of Congolese women who said, we've seen our people suffering and we want to do something about it. And I think also just more generally, I think about the Congolese women, despite everything that they've gone through. I know somebody mentioned in the chat about it being called the rape capital of the world because of the sexual violence and the assaults that have happened on women's bodies. You can look at Dr. Mukwege, he will talk about it too. And despite all of this happening, women are resilient. They get up every day to take care of their children. And then in the diaspora, I'm here today because of my mother, a Congolese woman who, despite everything that she faced in the Congo and in the US, she stood up and she kept fighting, and she made sure that I could stand here today. And so going forward, when I think of what is the role of Congolese women, I think of my mom, I think of my grandma who couldn't read, and today I'm a Harvard-educated woman. So it just goes to show you that Congolese women have fought for us to be here today, and they will continue to be fighting. And let's make sure that we include them in the conversation at the decision-making table, and we think about their role in developing Congo.
Ooh, very well said, Salima. Yeah, and with everything you said, just to add on, and basically, I also think it's also important for Congolese men also to kind of support and just highlight Congolese women and the work that they do in any way that, you know, they can. So it's, you know, a collaborative effort. It's very much true that the Congolese women, just in our culture in general, it kind of takes a sideline or a backseat of their contribution to everything, whether it's culture, music, and just in science and our social culture. So I think it's very important that they're, you know, they get highlighted and they're known and showcased that they're also part of the contribution, and our country cannot move forward if women are not included and being part of the decision-making process. And yeah, and I think I'm also doing my part as well with my platform. And I know for this March, we were, I was planning to organize the very first Congolese Women's Forum, highlighting Congolese women, mostly in the diaspora. Eventually, of course, when I expand, I keep on expanding, I would want it to reach all the way to women back home. So that was very exciting, but obviously that was postponed during the pandemic. But yeah, I think the role of women in Congolese society is very important. And it's also should be highlighted more just overall in our culture.
Thank you. And so on that note, I'm going to close it out and ask everyone one last question. I think this is probably one of the most important questions to ask during this panel. So if I were to ask you all to just, you know, think for a moment, we're at 60 years of Congo's Independence Day, and thinking of 60 years in the future, what is your dream or your vision or your hope for Congo? What do you hope Congo will look like in the next 60 years? So tell me, just to wrap it up, moving forward, Congo 60 years from now, what do you want? Tell me one thing, because I know we have very little time. So just one thing.
Did you say Thony? Yes?
Thony, and
okay.
Everybody else will speak, but you can start it off, Thony.
One thing that's putting me on the spot right there, on the spot, that's a little difficult. I have a whole list of things I wanted to see. But of all the possible things, you know, accountable leadership, you know, culture of hard work and so on, to me, I want to see an educated population, really, because I think change starts there. Our education, maybe purposely, was undermined and stifled in the last few years. But having an educated population will allow the mass to really participate in the political process, in actively, you know, pressuring the political elite to really advance our collective being, because that's one of the things that's missing right now. In my opinion, you cannot run away from politics. You know, our political elites holds the levers to so many things that impact all of our lives. And so I have a whole list, but I think education is the one thing, and I hope that 6 years from now, we will have an educated population that understands the stakes and participates.
Thank you. Everyone else, Liz, Eric, Salima, you want to chime in?
For me, 6 years from now, I hope that our country has really just stepped into its like greatness that is meant to be, and also just peace, prosperity, and yeah, and just a much better standard of living than where we are now.
And Liz, I'll add on to what you just said. I think we said it in the piece, I simply want Congolese lives to matter. And when they start to matter, you then take policy at the local level, at the national level. Internationally speaking, you're going to take a different approach. And so if you truly believe that Congolese people have value and should be here and should be thriving, I want you to then put together policies, like even as a US, when you're thinking about Congo or you're working at the World Bank or whatever, if you believe that we have value and we should exist and we should thrive, then your approach to how you work with people on the ground will look so much different.
All right, thank you. And now we have a couple questions. So I'm going
I
to
think
just go
Eric
through.
did not
Oh,
answer that,
sorry,
right?
Eric. I'm
That's
so
fine.
sorry.
No.
Go
I
ahead,
think
Eric. My apologies.
you said it all. I think it's the only thing. I mean, when I was thinking of the time we're to spend together tonight, the main thing that came to my mind was capacity building, was having responsible people at the helm of every aspect of society would take responsibility with what they have to deal with. And it comes with education naturally. It comes with not seeing the stories that we're seeing in the Eastern DRC. Those things should not be happening if we had fully capacitated our people in every single area. So that's really my wish and my dream.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to kind of combine these two. So we had someone who was asking about how do we move from talking about changing the narrative to actually making impact? And just to kind of also add on to that, who are allies to the Congolese people and how can we further engage them to help us move forward?
Do you want me to jump in?
Yes.
Okay. At the beginning of this conversation, we talked about leadership at some point. And I was saying, or at least alluding to the fact that the very root of that word, leadership, at least seen from an Irish perspective, would be death. To me, it connects to risk, taking risks. You can't expect change to happen with you sitting in your living room and watching TV or sending emails. I think part of the conversation is also being part of the action. A single individual is not going to be successful. Basokolaka elongina musapimo kote. You can't wash your face with a single finger. So it's important that many of us be involved in this conversation and be together in the action on the ground. Everyone should be doing whatever they want to do, but should be connected to the rest of the community. I think that's the way to start. If you go back to the DRC and if you wait to see things to actually change, for you to go and apply change, I'm not really seeing the point of this conversation. I don't really see what all of this means. So again, you need to be on the ground. Yes, it's risky. Yes, you might be derailing a career that you could have had with working with Amazon or Facebook out of California or whatever. But I think the reality of what we have responsibility for is in the DRC.
Eric.
Thony, I think you want to contribute as well to that?
Sure, just very rapidly, impact is important. I tend to be an intangible person because you start with intangibles before moving into the tangibles. Look, I think it begins with you dreaming of a better Congo, as corny as that sounds. You have to have that dream and that passion and then now move into action. Now, how do you materialize that? I consider changing the narrative to actually be active action. It's not passive. Because changing the narrative involves you, first of all, understanding what narrative is being said about the place, and then understanding what you want to change it to, and then you go into how you change that. There's collaboration is key in terms of changing it. When you look at all the great movements across history, whether it's people like Martin Luther King, who with his famous "I Have a Dream," he did not accomplish it by himself, but he was the kind of leader that inspires others to join the vision and really fight tooth and nail to see that vision come to pass. So that is a key thing I would say. So start by dreaming a better Congo, and then find the folks who kind of share that vision with you, align, build relationships, and then jump in and go and understand that it's a long-term effort also. It does not happen in a flash.
I just want to add to it. I mean, those are really great points. And in terms of taking action on making impact, I mean, one point I really want to stress is I know both Eric and Thony talked a little bit more about being on the ground, but you can also do change, impact without being on the ground as well. I mean, you can, something as simple as looking up grassroots organizations such as Malaika or DR Congo. You know, they always need support for your birthday. Instead of, you know, going to like having a birthday party, you can literally have a fundraising birthday and send people the link so that they can support that organization. You know, you can share on social media, post on your social media, share stories, or, you know, repost what's going on with protests back home and people that need resources. So those are some ways you can do that. And obviously with platforms like this, it's so much easier to connect with other people, like-minded people that are all about making impact, or that want to, you know, turn and, you know, take actionable steps. So, I mean, for me, that's the point that I wanted to make.
And Liz, I also wanted to say something similar to that, because I think for some of us, right, maybe we haven't quite figured out what being on the ground means, but I think that we can be in community with people who are doing that type of work. And then Eric talked about something about capacity building. And so maybe for me, post this, thinking about the lessons that I've learned and where I am today, what is my responsibility in transferring some of that knowledge over to people working, again, like civil society organizations, et cetera, so that maybe I can't be physically on the ground just yet, but my knowledge doesn't have to stop with me. It can be transferred and transformed so that people in Congo have the resources they need. Or maybe we're helping them make connections with Harvard and all its resources, or other universities, so that we are building those connections, those relationships for people on the ground.
And I have two last questions for the whole panel, and then we'll be closing it out, because obviously we know folks have other things to be doing. But one question that someone asked is, if everyone, all of you, can give examples of when you've seen resources, be it, you know, people or resources in terms of intelligence, being able to positively impact the Congo or our diaspora community. And if you can talk about, you know, your own experiences seeing that happen in a positive way. So let's start off with Salima, since you were the last person. Maybe talk about some of the work that you've been doing with Malaika, just as an example of that positive exchange of Congolese folks doing things on the ground.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. And I shared the link in the chat for Malaika, so you can take a look. But for me, like I said, it was founded by Noella. She is based in London, right, in the UK. But she was somebody who felt like, I need to go back home and do something. And so, right, she built the school. There's that whole entire connection. But what she also does is she builds relationships and connections with people everywhere. And so that, like, for example, there's a classmate of mine who's a journalist, human rights activist, who's now teaching classes on that. Last summer when I was there, I worked with the girls on leadership, so that earlier on we can start getting the girls to think about their capacity to make change in the Congo and Africa and the rest of the world. And so for someone like me who didn't quite know what it looks like to be back on the ground, but I knew that I can help with fundraising, I can help with event planning, I can do research, I can write. I took those skills and went to Malaika and said, this is the capacity that I have to help, and what can I do? And so I will say that for people that, if you haven't quite figured out what it is to make that change, do find those organizations with your skill sets so that you can empower them to do their work. And again, you're a volunteer, so they don't have to pay you. But I would say lots of opportunities for me, it's been through Malaika, to try and give back to Congo as I continue on this journey of what it means to give back.
Well, in terms of people utilizing resources to have an impact and, you know, make change on the ground, I would say that first, you know, we should not always get caught up on like the big, huge change, because a lot of time when people talk about change, leadership, we think it's about, you know, changing the world, changing big, having that, you know, huge impacts. But really, to me, just looking at people in the Congo every single day, you meet mothers that are walking long distances, you know, just to go to the market and sell and try to support their family, and they're struggling, but doing it day after day after day, despite the challenges on the ground. To me personally, when I talk to people like that, that is very inspiring, and to me, that is leadership, right? That I see on a day-to-day basis. But of course, you also have, you know, organizations, as I mentioned, Dr. Muyembe, I'm going to mention him again. To me, what he did, starting with Ebola, was just fantastic for the for the Congo. So yeah, so those are the things. But on a day-to-day basis, we see heroes, everywhere utilizing resources great in this country. We see, people fighting to make a difference, and it's a very inspiring thing to witness on the ground.
Just to add, I think, great points what Thony and Salima said. And then also just as individuals, like we all have family back home. We all know people back home. So it can start, yourself by just talking to your family members and figuring out they are your resources with what's going on the ground, and you can impact them and be a positive impact to change. It doesn't have to be, this grand, like Thony said, change takes time. And if you can find out with, people that are in your network or your community, you can start that way and then maybe eventually amplify in other places. Yeah, I think that was a question, right? What was the question?
The question was if you could give examples of when you've seen resources, be it like through people talent or more physical resources, that have made a positive impact in Congo from your own experiences.
Yeah. I mean, for definitely, I would say, like, organization like DR Congo, I know they've been doing this for 10 years. And, with Kaleba, she's definitely on the ground and working with women and children there. I mean, you hear a lot. There was also another one that I found out that was, I forgot the name, but there was a woman, she was used for the Blisco campaign, and she's doing research I think in Kinshasa about helping women there or people there that might have cancer. It's not coming to the top of mind right now. So, I mean, a lot of people are doing a lot of work. They are out there. You can find them on, if you do your research. But yeah, those are some of the people that are coming to my mind right now.
All right. And so the last question that I have, did Eric did you want to contribute to that, or can I ask this question, which might be more appropriate? So we have some folks that have been asking about raising capital, specifically the challenges that folks on the ground have been experiencing in terms of being able to leverage capital from outside venues or outside sources to help support work that's on the ground. So could you maybe talk about ways in which they can bridge that gap, or how folks who are trying to maybe start things in Congo and looking for capital, what they should be thinking about, and what are some resources that they should tap into? And this will probably be both for Eric and Thony, if you want to address this as our last question.
Yeah, Eric, why don't you start?
Okay. Look, as I would say that the story is roughly the same that you have everywhere. Finding money is available generally, but attracting it to what you're doing requires a number of things, a number of I would say, milestones. You need to have a solid project that makes sense. But generally, people come to you. When I was sitting in Kinshasa as a banker, or even now out of Nairobi, people might come to you with a plan, with a project, but no track record, nothing that they have done that gives credibility to their plans. So that's something that is important. If Noella is talking to you, for instance, or Université Nouveaux Horizons in Lubumbashi is talking to you, they have a track record. They've started some things. They have sometimes started their business out of a garage, like you have seen in many other countries. These kind of things happen. So you need to come with a story that is consistent, that makes sense, with a business plan, with certainly some cash flows that are realistic, that will be able to match whatever you're looking for. I'm involved now in something that actually helps banks in general, or financial institutions, actually be able to assist SMEs, small companies operating in the on the ground in Africa in general. So we're looking at the continent overall. And what we do is we provide guarantees, because you're going to have in this kind of an environment, banks requiring securities that you might have a hard time coming up with. So that's what we do. We assess the projects and support. Most of the time we do it through banks. So what we give to banks the guarantee that if they have losses, we will be covering those losses up to a certain extent. That's what we do. But obviously to do that, we're not crazy. We expect banks to have a rigorous approach. We expect them to understand the risk they're getting involved in. And we expect them to actually follow up, have a close contact with the entrepreneurs so that they can support them effectively. We do capacity building. I don't believe in doing banking in Africa without capacity building associated to it, both for the financial institutions and the individuals. So that's part of the conversation. So my point again is to say that there is money. I've been approached again recently, as that was actually last week, by a fund trying to establish itself in the DRC. The biggest thing they're struggling with is finding the right kind of teams to work with out of DRC in order to develop their plans. So that's maybe my first input in there. Thony?
Yes, sure, Eric. Thank you for that. And let me piggyback on that and start by saying the first and most important thing, yes, is traction. You know, entrepreneurs hate to hear that. It's like, okay, how do you expect me to get traction if I need money to prove that the concept is feasible? But you know what? That's just the way it is. Like, people will not fund an idea, typically speaking, even in the US. Now think about doing that for the DRC, where you already have this hard perception. So it's important to really have some kind of traction, and that would typically start with your close relationships, right? Your friends, families, and so on. And then once you have traction, and then you start doing your financial projections, as Eric said, you have all your fundamentals. The one thing I found out, you will need to be almost as an evangelist, talking about the viability of the African market and the Congolese market when you're trying to raise capital in the United States, because it's an environment that is not very well known, typically speaking. It's a French-speaking country, so you really have to do a lot of convincing, even if you have the fundamentals in place. Somebody has this microphone. I'm not sure if you can put it on mute, please. There's a lot of wind. So yeah, so you need to be a big ambassador, understand the market, but you will be an evangelist at the end of the day. I like to say that. That's on the outside. Now here on the ground in the Congo, we're also in the process of putting together an investment fund to help a lot of young entrepreneurs formalize their concepts and then start heading gradually towards growth. Because one thing we've seen on this side of the on the ground here is that there's a lot of it's kind of like capacity building, as Eric said, but people need a lot of effort in formalizing their businesses and having reporting numbers and metrics that will actually showcase in numbers that your concept is viable, so that we can have further fundraising rounds down the line. So those are the two things I would say: so traction, being an ambassador for here, and then on here formalizing your initiative.
All right, y'all. So I know that we're getting some more questions. We're at time. So what we're going to do is we'll capture those questions and try and send out the answers or responses from the panelists after this session. So thank you all for contributing your questions. I have to say though, because it is Independence Day, there's one question that we ask on the team. It's a highly debated question. I don't know about you all, but in celebrating today, so two things that I will be celebrating my Independence Day coming from the East, it's fufu and mandazi. So our two debates here is whether you're team fufu or team kwanga. So we're gonna end the call with that. And we'll see who is on the right side of this Congolese culture. So panelists, let us know, team fufu or team kwanga? How are you celebrating today?
Kwanga all day, with some taba all day, maybe with some pondu on the sides. I don't know about this fufu stuff. I just, kwanga all day. That's all I have to say.
Yes, Liz, you're absolutely right. It's Team Kwanga all day. You can't go wrong with Kwanga. Fufu, it's too common. So Kwanga all day. That's the way to go. Good job, Liz.
I respectfully disagree. Fufu all day, every day. I could eat it every day for the next however long I live, and I'll get tired with some fish that straight from Congo before the lockdown, and maybe some skuma wiki, forget the English word, collard greens. There we go. Happy Independence Day, everyone.
Eric, are you holding back? What's it gonna be? Are you gonna be on the right side of the team?
Makemba.
Makemba, you bring a whole other thing. Okay, so with that, I'm going to kick it off to our other team member, Laura Coupe, and she's gonna close this out. But before then, I just wanna thank you all so much. So Laura, go ahead and close us out.
Sure, well, I'm so happy to see so many beautiful Congolese faces on my Zoom. So I think it just means we have to have more of this, because I know that, as Luco mentioned, folks had more questions. So we definitely need to keep having this conversation and having more events. And I'm based in DC, so greetings from DC. And so we wanted to close with a call to action. We don't just want to talk. We're trying to have a new mentality, a new energy. So we have a call to action. So one thing that the CDIS team wants you all support on is next year we're going to have a conference. So last year we had our inaugural conference in New York, and it was a success because it showed to our community that we can have events of this sort and talk about issues like education, entrepreneurship, healthcare, you name it, and network and collaborate. And so we want to have this event again next year. So we definitely want your support for that. Again, based on the current events of Corona, we can't definitively say when that will be. So it will be either in the spring or in the fall. And then something else that we want to do is we want to build a spirit of, collaboration and networking. So something that we want to make sure of is like, now you're part of the CDIS family. So look out for any communications about opportunities to network, and then also let us know about anything that you are working on. Are there any projects or any businesses you're working on, so that we can amplify? So we want everyone to win. So please let us know anything that you are working on. And again, something that we pride ourselves on is that our effort is inclusive. So as you could see with the panelists, we try to have a gender balance, diversity across generations and ages, just to provide different perspectives and just to highlight that everyone has a part. So please engage with us. We'll store all the information from our chat, and we will be in touch. And again, happy Independence Day. And I hope you all celebrate in whatever way that you can.